Dear viewers, in this episode we will explore the most scary story I have heard lately. Our protagonist, a compassionate caregiver, steps into a nightmare scenario. Meredith, an elderly woman with a peculiar affinity for insects. Little does she know, Meredith's son Michael hides a gruesome secret that will shock you to the core. You will be drowned in chilling events, uncovering dark obsessions, mysterious rituals, and a web of deception. And in the end, something really terrifying happens to the author, and you really don't want to miss that horrible incident. I take care of the elderly for a living. It is a side job, but even with some of the uncomfortable parts about it, I love how I can make them smile and have a better time despite them being alone. I normally visit them every few days to check on how they're doing, bathe them, make sure they take their medicine, etc. One day, a man who sounded desperate and exhausted called my number and asked me if I could check on his mother as she is in her 90s, has dementia, and is overall acting strange or overly aggressive. I knew these were the normal symptoms of it, but by his voice I knew he couldn't take much more of this, so I agreed and planned to meet up with her after I had some information. It turned out that the only thing that brings the woman comfort is spiders and other insects. I found this a bit odd, but getting older can be one hell of a change, so whatever floats their boat is good to me. After I got her medication schedule as well as some other medical things, I drove to the address the man gave to me. When I pulled into the driveway, the house seemed ran down, abandoned almost. Nonetheless, I got out and walked to the door and knocked gently. The man I talked to over the phone opened the door. As it swung open, what looked like a swarm of insects ran in between the man's feet. He looked even more tired than he sounded, with large bags under his eyes. "Good morning. I'm sorry it's such a mess. Mother doesn't like her things touched." "It's no problem. We can work on this as we go if that's okay with you." He agreed almost immediately and took me to the living room to meet his mother. Sitting on the couch staring at a TV that played an old romance show, blared as she stared at it with a straight face. She turned and looked at me, her eyes suddenly wider. When I thought she would start yelling about a stranger, she spoke calmly. "Are you here to help me?" I found this as a bit surprising. She wasn't frantic, but she did have the confusion, as most elderly people did. "Yes, I will be seeing you every few days to see how you're doing. Is that okay with you?" I used the most gentle voice I had, not to alarm her. She looked at me as if I were an idiot. "No, I don't need none of that medical help. I don't know the man that's living here. He won't let me go." The woman spoke as someone with memory loss would. I felt bad since she wasn't even able to remember her son. For the next few weeks I learned that the son was Michael and his mother was Meredith. She hated every insect in that house, and it confused me since. Every time I came, Michael was in the room or right outside of it. It was almost like he was listening. Of course, I put this aside as he was seeing what I did to care for his mother, so he could as well. Until the day his mother had an aggressive outburst, throwing things at Michael while stomping on the insects around the house. This is when he finally snapped and punched a hole in the already broken wall and stormed out of the house. Things like this happened every so often, but I feel like Michael had lied about her comfort in bugs since he was the only one affected by her stomping on them. One day I decided to stay longer than what I got paid for. I decided to ask Meredith since she seemed pretty well, besides not remembering her son, and she said yes immediately. She told me to stay in a closet with the door slightly cracked open, but it was too dark to see through. Michael believed I left at 5 p.m. when it was now going on 7, and I was still there. I seen Michael come in the door holding a large bag and slammed it into the ground. He stared at it for a moment before turning a lamp on that lit up an entirety of the room. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. My phone began to vibrate. Luckily, it wasn't on volume since that would tell him exactly where I was. I heard my own voice telling him to leave a message. "Hey, I'm sorry to bother you so late. I didn't know if you could come earlier tomorrow. She's getting worse and refused to take her medication. Please get back to me." As he hung up, he took a utility knife out of his pocket and cut down the bag, revealing a body of what looked to be a middle-aged woman. She had clearly blunt trauma to her head, and she was barely identifiable. He suddenly reached in the closet and pulled out a large jar, luckily reaching on the furthest side of my body. The jar was filled with insects. Handfuls of them were taken from the jar and shoved into wounds that the body had. I almost threw up to the sight. I began recording it from my phone. Finally, he left. I turned my flashlight on and looked around in the closet to see a stack of papers. They were medical records of Meredith. She was only 75 and had no issues with memory loss or dementia. The only family listed for her was a late woman who died in a car crash 17 years ago. I stared at the pages in horror, as the ones I was given were fake. As I shifted through, I found flyers of a religion called Insect Living from the flyer. The people in this made frequent human sacrifices to insects. Putting them in someone's body will make them free. After everything I seen, I called the police and told them the situation and address. I'm currently sitting in the closet still, and I think Michael heard me talking. I hear him walking back to the room. I don't know if they will be here in time, but I only hope Meredith is safe, or I at least distract him for long enough that she can leave. I hope you all enjoy the mystery and adrenaline. Please consider a like, comment this video, and to support my work, please subscribe and ring the bell for weekly videos. If you have your own story and you want to be showcased on the next video, send us an email. Have a spooky weekend.